Hi everyone, and welcome back to our one of the last meetings, which is related to coronavirus, because things are getting much better all around the world, and I can see that people started to be more active and started to be more involved with the sailing and training. So that's a really good news. So in our case, when we see the numbers are going down in the number of participants, it means that people are becoming more active. So that's a good news compared to the other social stuff, which people are looking for the increasing numbers. We are looking for people to be back on the water. And I hear most of the countries in Europe, at least, they started to be back on the water and they're allowed to continue their training. Also here in Malta, we are also allowed to officially train, and that was happening for the last 2 weeks. So we are back and we are more happy to enjoy the sun and the good wind. But we are gonna continue with our webinars today, and also we have to complete with our Rule 42 session, which is quite crucial for our sport. And then we are moving forward. We will do probably once a week, more irregular, but we will continue just to stay in touch with people and just to keep you updated with what things happening, sharing the experiences like what we did in the past 2 months, inviting the special guests. And today I want you to introduce to our another special guest, which is Marcin Rudawski, if I spell it correctly. So he's a guy from Poland, and he time us and 8-time radial European champion. Actually, it was a consecutive 8 times he won the European title. So it's a really impressive result in the radial fleet. It's men's radial fleet. Yes, we all know it's not an Olympic class for the men, but it's still a highly competitive class, and it's also part of our sport. And it's really difficult to maintain this performance through such a long period and to have such an outstanding result. So welcome, Marcin. And we are gonna go through our usual Q&A, and I'll be running the questions for Marcin, and we are gonna go ahead with let's see if Marcin is with us. Marcin?
Yes, hi Alex. Thank you for having me.
Hi Marcin, thanks for joining our webinar. And mostly we are inviting all these people with a really high results in the sailing from the past 10 years. It's mostly to give an example to the youth generation, to the new generation, and to people from other parts of the world, like what it takes to get to this high level, what sort of experiences people had. And it's a very valuable when people are sharing that they were able to balance their life with the high performance sailing. They were able to study, and this is a really high inspiration for the young kids these days, because they really can't commit themselves only to sailing. And you guys are sharing with us all these past experiences, and it gives a hope that you can do everything at the same time, and plus you can also achieve a high results, and also you can be really outstanding in the education, because some of the people believe that it's only one thing you can do, but these days you have to be multitasking, and that's why we are inviting you guys to share with us. So as an introduction, I would like to hear from you your story, how you started sailing, and what first boat you started sailing, and what age, because it's quite important to understand what age people are starting sailing.
Okay, so actually my sailing career, my sailing adventure started by accident. I was 8 years old when my father decided that, you know, I should do some sports, and well, obvious choice was football. But you have to remember that it was like late 80s, and Poland was nothing as it looks today. We were a post-communist country, just learning how the democracy and the free market works. So there were no football schools or clubs as we know them today, you know, where you can start playing football at the age of 4. So my father took me to one of the football clubs in Warsaw, and he introduced me to them. And surprisingly, they said, well, yeah, we could take your son into our club, but bring him in 5 years' time, because he is much too young at the moment. So, well, my father was really surprised, but he kept on looking. He took me to the athletic club, and he had exactly the same. And just by coincidence, he learned that there is a new group organized for kids to teach them sailing. And my father had nothing to do with sailing at that time. So this is actually how I got to sailing. And a funny fact is that I actually start sailing not at the age of 8, but at the age of 9, because for almost a year we did a lot of different sports, a lot of exercises, some theory of sailing, but we've never seen an optimist at that point. So actually I started optimist at the age of 9, and I sailed optimist until I was 15. I won Polish national once. I represented Poland on 2 Optimist Worlds and I think 1 Europeans. And then when I was done with Optimist, well, there was no Laser 4.7 at that time. So I had to go straight to Laser Radial, and it was a shock. It was really a shock because I was not prepared physically. Our coach knew nothing about the boat. I was struggling a lot. Actually, most of my friends dropped at that point because we were a nice group of friends sailing Optimist. But when we moved to a more difficult boat, some of them dropped out. And I did a lot of progress during those years. Somehow, actually, my parents found SailCoach. I'm pretty sure, as far as I remember, that the first communication we had with SailCoach was made by fax, because at that time we didn't have even a proper internet connection, to send email and so on. So actually, SailCoach had a great impact on my development in early stages of sailing laser. Then after Radial, I switched to standard. I did 2 Olympic campaigns on standard. I did not qualify to neither of them, actually. And then I moved back to Laser Radial.
It's quite an interesting story that you did Optimist, and then after there was a big shock switching from Optimist to Radial. Probably at this time, even the Radial wasn't so popular. Most of the people were pushed straight away to standard. And I can imagine the shock for the kids going from that class from the Optimist straight away to the bigger boat and more physical, which is probably still a problem these days, that people are not prepared to jump, to make such a big step, and a lot of kids are dropping out. So that's nothing new, but hopefully the coaches will be more aware how to prepare mentally the kids to the next level and how to approach this to the next stage. But you mentioned already that you did 2 campaigns for the Athens and Beijing. That was quite a while ago, and maybe you can share with us some experience, because I think at that time you also had quite a high competition within the national team to get to the Olympics. Was it right?
Yes, I did. And as I mentioned before, I've never qualified for the Olympics. So those 8 years, those 2 Olympic campaigns were extremely intense. And as I live in Warsaw, there is no seaside nearby. I have just a small lake, which is actually great for starting the sailing adventure, sailing career. But for the Olympic preparation, it's too limited. So I had to travel a lot. I was spending over 220 days away from home, And it was extremely difficult because I wanted to finish my degree. I wanted to finish my studies and get a degree. So I was also struggling because of my height. I was never tall enough. I'm 176 centimeters tall, and well, it is great for radial, but it is definitely not enough for a full rig. So either I was too light and too short to compete in strong winds, or I was like 86 kilos plus with a bit of fat, and I was okay in strong winds, but struggling a lot in the light breeze. So and I've never learned where is a good compromise between these two. I've never learned that, but I did learn a lot during those years. It was a long process. I did not have any access to, a physical coach, psychologist, dietitian. So I was experimenting. I was experimenting on my own, which was not always very good, because it is probably the reason why I have back problems today. And it was not efficient. So despite having some good results and being somewhere in the middle of gold fleet in most standard events, I will not say that I was a successful standard sailor. But however, it brought me a lot of benefits when I decided to come back to radial, because at that time I became quite strong for a standard sailor. What later on, especially when I lost 10 kilos, made me probably the fittest leather sailor in a fleet. So, over 10 years, I was competing against many standard sailors who wanted the world champion title in radial, and being lighter than them, but as strong as they are and as fit as they were, was my key advantage to be successful for so many years in laser radial fleet. And sailing in a competitive fleet, as standard fleet was a great confidence boost. Starting tactics, playing the shifts right. I watched all the best sailors from close range. I watched their routines, how they handle the pressure. And one of the advantages of traveling with SailCoach, for example, was spending time with Vasilis Bogar, Gareth Blackenberg. We trained together on and off the water. We eat together. We had fun together. I could watch how they behave before, during, and after the big events. It was like I've learned a lot just from watching those guys performing. Well, I was too young. I was a little bit too young, maybe immature to benefit in full from that experience, actually. But when I get my first world champion title, something clicked together, and it uplifted my sailing career to what it is today.
That's definitely a good thing for the young generation to experience the Olympic campaign, because that's probably the toughest thing they could do in the laser sailing, where you can learn, when you can explore yourself. Yes, it's not always a key to success, but that's a place where you can study yourself and get to the higher level, or to challenge every day at every regatta, because the Olympic campaign, it's never easy, but it's always a fun route. And having such a nice guys around you like Gareth and Vasily definitely was teaching you a lot. And that's probably still a way to develop, is having a really good sailors around you, and the young ones are just getting motivated and trying to challenge themselves to beat these older guys, which is still in some ways is still dominating the fleet, but the young ones need to see that this is the way they behave, and something to learn from them. We're moving to the next question, and you mentioned in the previous topic that you had to be traveling for almost 200 days a year, and always train and this, but you are still able to study in Warsaw, and you did a semester in Barcelona. Tell us how you are managing to combine, how you are balancing between studies and sailing.
Actually, this is a great question because I'm asked that very, very often. To be honest, whenever I had a really tight schedule, sailing at the university at the same time, I did best in both those fields. Somehow I was on a very different of performing, time management, and so on. And I could really perform well in both of those fields. I finished management in Warsaw University, and I did a semester, as you mentioned, on Erasmus in Barcelona. At that same time, I traveled around the world, and I was doing Olympic campaign. And well, to be honest, I did study longer than most of my friends, but it was the only way to do it. I also had an individual schedule of exams and lectures. I was not signed to one group at the university. I was migrating between many just to have enough presence on lectures and to be qualified for the examination. I did study, of course, during my traveling, during the regattas, but my university actually was very, very helpful. And sometimes, despite professors, complaints about my absence, then they stood by my side, and it was really, really great. To that point, actually, that with my grades, I would never qualify for Erasmus in Barcelona. Actually, I did qualify for Stockholm and I think Copenhagen. And keep in mind, it was a winter semester, so there was no chance to get any sailing at that time. And just only because I asked them, I need a place to go somewhere with an access to the sea, and they actually made it happen. And I went to Barcelona for half a year, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was a great chance to have sailing every few days a week. I will never had such a chance somewhere else, and it was fantastic. Studying and sailing at the same time led me a lot of things. How to manage the time, how to manage the logistics, how to prioritize things, and it actually taught me something very important. And it taught me that in order to succeed and to make your goals happen, you have to sacrifice things. And I did not have time to party with my friends, even though nightlife in Barcelona is quite wild. I rarely had a chance to experience that. I rarely spent time with my girlfriends. Actually, this is why they change so often. I did not play many computer games. I did not watch a lot of TV or movies, but I cannot complain. I will never complain. I did like my life a lot. And, a sailing career is just a great school of life.
That's a good thing you shared with us, that for us, sailing itself is already quite an interesting subject, and we can dedicate most of our time to it. And there is no even time, when you prioritize sailing and studies, there is no even time left for other entertainment, which is quite tempting these days because we have a lot of things happening, the computer, the TV shows. There is so much entertainment that sailing is becoming one of the last parts. But once you get on the fresh air and in the nice environment, it's a really good place to be. And after this quarantine, I think people will start to appreciate what they had when they got locked down. We are going to your radial career, where you started to perform, and as we see that you actually came from the standard class where you got all your school, all your tough job done there, and then when you came to the radial, you just started to use all your knowledges and all the confidence you got from the senior level. Because even to perform in the gold fleet, it requires a really high level of sailing skill and the mental toughness. So I think it's already a really high standard. But then when you move to Radial in 2009, you got your first world title, and then it happened to follow by the 2010 in Largs, and then 2011 in La Rochelle. So there was 3 consecutive world titles. How did you feel after these titles, and what it changed in your life, having such a high results?
Well, I was really fortunate to win the world in Japan, because to be honest, I almost did not go. I was struggling with my back injury at that time, and I couldn't recover. Actually, at the beginning of 2009, I went to Europa Cup in Italy. It was not in Garda, some Follonica or some other place. And basically, I haven't been sailing for almost 12 months. And it was my first time on a boat, first time on the Radial since 8 years. And I've met Trevor Miller, your boss, and he said, "Oh, Marcin, you look so happy. I've never seen you so happy, and you will do well at this event." And I said, "Come on, Trevor, I haven't been sailing for almost a year. I lost 10 kilos. So I don't remember how to sail Radial." But basically, he was right. There was, I don't know, 360 boats, and I did win the event easily. And it all started with that. And then I had an injury, the back injury, which was a shock for me. I didn't know what to do, and I was struggling with the recovery. So you know, I bought a ticket to Japan just after the Europa Cup in Italy. And you know, when I knew that I'm injured and I will not recover perfectly, I wanted to sell the ticket, just to get my money back. And they said that no way, sorry, we cannot refund you for the ticket. And I said, oh, okay, I will go to Japan. I've never been. I will do some sightseeing. I will do a little bit of sailing. So I went there without any pressure. Basically, you know, I was every day doing my back exercises just to not feel pain, and being happy I didn't have any pressure at that time. Just made everything easy for me. I wanted, it was 12 races regatta. I won the event after 10 races. I didn't have to sail on the last day. It was actually amazing. And a year after that was Largs in Scotland, and it was a very different story because I was much better prepared, and I did believe that I can win the event. And actually, I came there to win it, and it was really. Scotland is hard to live. I mean, it was middle of the summer. It was raining every single day, and it was really cold. It was windy, and I had to compete against standard sailor. Actually, it was Polish guy Wojtek who just won. No, he didn't win. He was fourth at the World Cup in standard rig, so he was really on his peak form. And to be honest, we've never sailed against each other. I mean, we were split into 2 groups. We did only qualifying races, so I don't remember, 6 or 8. And the first day of finals, there was completely no wind, so we did no racing. And the last day of the regatta, there was, 45 knots, and we didn't do any races either. So I was basically very fortunate to win this event as well. And La Rochelle was a dream come true, because I really wanted to win this event. Actually, my coach, with whom I worked, he did cancel. He couldn't come with me to that event. So 2 weeks before the event, I had to ask my father to take holidays from work and go with me for the event. He barely knew how to ride a rib. He was much more stressed than I was at that moment, at that time. you know, every coach is driving around the race course to watch his sailors, how they perform. My father stayed at the starting line because he was too stressed to go to the top mark and and to the next mark to see how I'm doing. And again, I was competing against a standard guy. Well, I forgot his name, but he was an Australian guy with whom I actually competed against during my standard years. And I did win that event, and it was first time anybody did win three times in a row in Laser Radial. And you know, a Polish anthem at the prize giving ceremony, and my father standing there next to me. It was a great experience. I guess that was the best experience of my life comparing to sailing.
They're all quite different stories, but probably the first one made the things click, and then you were already coming to the next events with the will just to win, because the first one was the one which happened when you were in the really good flow and in the good mood, and it all just went towards the good stuff. Yeah. And we will talk about your other results. A few to talk about, and when I saw all the list of the events you won, it's very impressive. But in 2012, after the 2011, you missed the World Championship, and also in 2013 you came back, but you already was not the first one. So what happened in 2012, and what happened later on in your career, what it taught you not to be a winner? Because after 3 times, probably you were expecting to jump into and get the 4th time, but it didn't happen. So what those losses teach you?
Yeah, actually, that was the greatest experience of my time, to be honest. But I did miss 2012 Worlds because at that time I actually tried to qualify for the Olympics again because, well, there was a chance. There basically was a chance, and being 3 times world champion, you know, make some sponsorship available for me. So I gained a few kilos, and I tried to make my Olympic dream happen. Actually, it did not happen, and that's why I did miss the Radial Worlds. But so in Ireland in 2013, I was sailing against Tristan from Australia, and he just won the 2012 Worlds, and he was in a great shape. And the event was, I was struggling during this event. And I'm not saying this as an excuse, because Tristan was a better sailor at that time, and he should have won the event. But I had so many problems. Like every single day, I had to be at the jury room because, you know, my results were not there. I won the race. I was mixed with another group, and they scored me like 57 or something like that. And, you know, every single morning I had to be at the jury office. I had to, you know, I was traveling with the group of Polish sailors, and every morning I have to ask them, come on, can we go half an hour earlier to the yacht club? Because I have to go again to the jury room and explain what happened a day before. So it was a difficult event for me, and I was beaten by a better sailor. So being second at that event was really a great result. And then 2014 Worlds in Poland. Oof. I was really well prepared. But I did put too much pressure on myself. I lost a lot of weight because I wanted to be in a great shape. And, you know, the event happened to be like 20-25 knots every single day. So again, I lost to the standard guy who was just faster than me. But but the biggest lesson from those losings was that the greatest motivation for me, because it's not for everybody, but for me personally, is losing is the greatest motivation of all. Especially losing in Poland was like really hard to swallow. I remember I had to stay there longer for the youth event, which was just next week. And every single day I did, a long cycling just to work on my fitness, just to prepare for another year. I decided that next year I will be even in a better shape and I will win the Worlds. And actually I did win the Worlds in 2015. And I use this technique of motivation purposely nowadays as well. And for example, I like to go every season to Europa Cup in Garda. It is quite early in the season, like, April or late March. And I've never been in great shape at that event. I did win it a couple of times, but I lost it more times than I win it. And it always was a great force for me to put, more work into my preparation for the main events. Like, a fear of defeat is the greatest motivator for me.
It's good stuff. You mentioned that you were picking to give yourself an extra motivation, and this is probably a technique which is well known of the periods and putting the priorities where you're gonna pick and when you're gonna try to boost yourself, when you're gonna do, because a lot of people think that every event you travel you have to pick, but in reality we choose some of the events to fix some of the stuff or get our confidence back, or to understand where we're after a winter season, and then from there to start working towards your peak event. And that's what you said that you were experimenting, but that's naturally happened to the correct way of approaching the most important events. And following the next year, you started to perform again at your peak, and it happened that you won another 3 world titles consecutive. Every time we're talking about the World Championship, at the same time, you are the winner of the European title every year. So we are more focused on the world titles, but it was already a standard thing that every year you are winning the European title. That was already a big success. But of course, we all want to have outstanding results at the World Championship. And you proved it again to the fleet, and it happened again 3 years in a row. And from what you said, it was not a coincidence. It was a well thought and well prepared pattern towards these results. And maybe you can prove to us as well that after your 2 second and third position, you put yourself a goal and you worked to it, and it happened in 2015. That's true?
Yes, Alex, this is definitely true, because as you said, I had a great pattern of preparation, and I just, executed every single year with small adjustment. What I find out during those years is that, even if I win a title, like I did win in 2015, I looked for things to change, to improve, just to be a little bit faster next season, because everybody is working hard, everybody is developing, so it's not like you take a pattern and make it exactly the same. You have to make adjustments, you have to put something extra to make it work. And for me, the great motivation was those 2 defeats in previous years. I was basically in great shape. 2015, 2017, it was my peak years. And actually, that was also the time when I started to work with Agata. Therefore, I could sail more, and I had more time on the water. I was definitely the fittest guy in the fleet. I had a chance to train on a regular basis with top radial woman in the world. So it made my life a little bit easier. But at the same time, I was able to use every single minute spent on the water to my advantage. At the same time, I was very happy because I finally met the right woman, the woman of my life. So, you know, and again, every single year I had to compete against different standard guys. So it make every year a little bit different, always challenging, always a little bit difficult. And then in 2018, I got married. My son was born. So, you know, the priorities had changed a little.
Definitely changing the priorities when you start to settle down and the family appears in your future. But you mentioned that you started to work with Agata, and that's quite a common way of keeping yourself active. So you started to coach Agata, yeah, before the Rio, and at the same time you were a training partner. So that was extra sailing for you to stay fit and to be active. And also it's a very good boost for the girls fleet to train with the strong training partners. You were mentioning about Houston, but he was also able to train with the top radial girls, where he was pushing them, they were pushing him, and that's how they developed this high results standard. And what it was like to become a coach from a sailor. That's what I had to transit from, and maybe you could share with us with your experience.
Well, my transition period was quite long. I mean, I was not just, you know, I haven't changed boat for a coach boat because I actually never wanted to do that. You know, every time, at least at that time, every time somebody asked me to do some coaching, I didn't like the idea. I didn't like to spend time on a coach boat. And actually, Agata, her coach, and her father, and the Polish Association, which was involved at some point in this as well, made a great combination of all. So basically, I was a sparring partner of Agata. I did spend some time on the coach boat, but not, you know, full-time coaching. And it suits me well. It worked for me best in terms, as you said, I spent a lot of time on the water, you know, competing against best sailors. And as far as I started working with Agata, the biggest surprise was that, you know, for a national team sailor, things that are really obvious for me, for her were extremely new. She didn't know a lot of basic stuff, maybe not basic stuff, but stuff I was thinking about basics. So actually I tried to teach her everything I know about, you know, sailing, that's obvious, but also about mental, you know, and the physical preparation, about attitude to training, but to actually every aspect of your life, because I strongly believe that, you know, the way you handle your things around sailing have a great impact on your sailing as well. So, you know, we work on her focus, we work on setting up the goals and working on them as well. I teach her, you know, work ethic. I teach her a little about diet, and, you know, at the same time I was developing as well. In many aspects, actually, Agata overtook me, you know, to that point that at the end of our working together, I had to skip gym trainings, you know, in order to get recover for another day on the water, because at some point she started to train really, really hard, but it paid off. It paid off because she did a great job. She sacrificed a lot of her life just going strongly into sailing. And, you know, from the middle of, I think, Silver Fleet in Worlds in Santander, I think 2014. She did top 10 in 2015 at the Europeans. She did 10th in the Medemblik at the Laser Radial Worlds. Well, unfortunately, it was not enough for her to qualify to Olympic Games, but she made a great improvement, and she started to deliver great results on a regular basis.
And she's still active, and she's still at the quite high level in the radial fleet. If I'm not wrong, she didn't stop. She's still continuing sailing, and she's still doing very well. Yes, coaching is such a thing that it's not something you were taught how to do. A lot of sailors have a lot of experience, but they realize when they start sharing and it actually affects the other sailors, they discover that they are able to coach the people, because sailing is such a complex sport, and we all think when you experience it multiple times, you think it's a basic, but for other people who didn't experience, it's something new. And just sharing this knowledge, and when you see that it's working, that's where you start to discover your coaching experience, and when you start to be able to transfer the information to the next stage. It wasn't coming from me, it came from the boss. But for quite many years, you were avoiding the social media, and the last year you started to be active and you start to be visible. What has changed and why it happened?
Yeah, this is very true. Actually, I hated social media. Well, to be honest, I don't know the exact reason. I was bored before internet, so maybe it's not in my DNA. How it is nowadays with young people. I started using social media on regular basis, and it was a huge step for me. So like a big step out of my comfort zone. What I know today is a great help for a development. So I keep on doing that, and on a higher level. I try to look for such small things that scares me a little and do them, because it builds your confidence, it builds your self-belief. This is actually why I started, for example, YouTube channel. Well, coming back to why I started to write in social media. Well, after working with Agata, some other sailors approached me and asked me for help. And, as I stayed with Agata for, 100 days a year, basically, we could speak on a regular basis, actually every single day. And I could easily transfer my knowledge to her. We could develop some ideas all together. So basically, again, I have a new sailor, and I have to tell him again the same I did teach Agata, but I just have 3 days to do it, because I'm not working with him for 100 days. So how do I do that? And I came up with idea. So I will start to write about this. So I will start to write about this, and when the sailor approached me, I would just tell him, take a look at I don't know, my Facebook, and check what I wrote about this, and we can discuss it later on. And when I started doing this, I started to get a lot of messages, how good it is, how helpful it is. Some coaches called me and they said that, Marcin, every time you post something on Facebook, I ask my sailors to read it, because it's really good stuff, and we all learn from this. So basically, it was my fuel to keep it doing. And I feel, as you mentioned, you are a coach yourself, so you know what I'm saying now. when you help athletes, when you help sailors to improve, when you see that they are performing better, it's a great feeling. It is really one of the best feelings you can have. So this is why I keep on doing this. This is very satisfying from, you know, coach perspective. And actually, I've also received some messages, you know, from parents, because their kids started to pay more attention to school, for example, even though, you know, I'm writing about sports basically. So basically, I will keep on doing this because I know that I can help athletes. And you know, when I was young, there was no one around to teach me those things, and maybe that is why it took me so long to get my first medal. Well, hopefully my work will help others, you know, to accomplish their goals earlier.
That's why we have these technologies these days, and us coaches, we start to spend more time working through the internet rather than on the water, especially in these days. But yes, the social media does a great job to stay in touch with your athletes, because these days we have many commitments, but to optimize your timing, you can work remotely and you can continue athletes. This is a great advantage of the technologies these days. Still, the best way is to have a direct contact face to face, but that's probably the biggest advantage these days on the social media. As a professional who are spending their time on the water, that's a great stuff to be visible. Otherwise, if to hide from social media, you will be invisible just on the water. Yeah. You were telling us about the fact that you started coaching, and you discovered some interesting parts in the coaching Agata, and you started to see the priorities in the preparation. And in your opinion, what is the most important part? Is just training and physical preparation, or mental preparation? Where to focus to the athletes these days? Because a lot of people say you have to be mentally strong, you have to be fit, you have to do this. But you mentioned a priority, and would you like to share with us what you found through all this experience, through all these years? What is the key to success as well?
Well, as you mentioned, like, sailing is a really complex sport, and basically you have to spend your time on the water. You have to be extremely well physically prepared. But at the moment, most of the top sailors are, and you know, we are looking for something that will make it click. Yeah, something that will let you perform a little bit better than others. And well, mental strength and mental training, in my opinion, is definitely underestimated in sailing. You might be surprised, because on the top level, most of the sailors already work or worked with psychologists, mental or peak performance coaches. However, the level of competition is really high at the moment, and people are looking for a small advantages to just get ahead of their competition. And I believe that mental strength gives you that edge, especially in the long run. Like, for example, in football, people understand that mental strength might be a separator between being, okay player or a successful professional with a great salary. And those small adjustments can make a huge difference on their living. So therefore, they start to look for such help at the beginning of their career. I work with few athletes now, and just 2 of them are sailors. Most of them are actually football players. To be honest, the level of dedication to the sport is higher in that group. So there are many aspects of, you know, mental preparation, peak performance that you could benefit from in your life and in your career. I dig deeper about this when my son was born, because, you know, suddenly I realized that running 2 companies, sailing, training, and being a present father is not an easy task. So I had to find ways to handle limited time, lack of sleep, bad mood, and I believe I did a good job working on that. I still learn, you know, how to be at least 1% more efficient, and I do strongly believe that this 1% it might be vital to a successful life. And this is what I teach my athletes, how to make this 1% working on their behalf.
You mentioned the mental strength, and thinking back about all our webinars with the past Olympic medalists and the champions, probably all of them had the same point where they had to mention that the mental strength was a key of success. And to be honest, most of them had to develop their own. They were studying the books. Lilia was mentioning that she was starting to study the psychologist, the sports psychology, because we are so busy with learning the technical part and learning the skills on the water, and we are forgetting about the competitive mindset and this part. Nowadays, we discovered it, and as coaches, we can easily help and facilitate it, but that came quite at the late stage. It's only been a focus in the last 10 years, while before it was just how fast you sail. These days you have to be mentally strong and a fast sailor. And probably the people who want to talk to you, and they can always get in touch and always ask you some more specific questions. And that's going to be very valuable for them, and maybe it will help them to reach their dream in this sport. So that's probably all what we wanted to hear. And maybe the last question would be to you is, nowadays you're retired from the radial sailing, and just tell us a little bit about what are your future plans and what are you doing at the moment?
Well, actually, I'm still hoping to be able to take part in senior Europeans this year, if they happen. Maybe in the future I will do some master events. I'm not sure yet. Actually, I did try to quit sailing once in 2008, and I did fail. So I believe I will stay somewhere around laser. But yes, you know, I'm almost 40, and I do think about my future after sailing. I will definitely be involved as a sailor's coach, not on a regular basis, because I cannot put 200 days into it. I cannot be away from my family for so long time. Basically, my family is just more important than that. I do have my businesses, so now I would be able to finally be more involved into them, and I will definitely focus more on, you know, expanding my mental training practice, because I believe it is something that sailing is still missing. You mentioned that, you know, coaches are learning, and it is developing, but there is a huge field to be covered. So especially, you know, on a lower levels. So and I do believe that I can help a lot of athletes achieving their goals, you know, shorten the way to their success. Well, I want to be a mentor for them that I wish I had 20 years ago. basically.
That's all we wish to be someone else a long time ago, but that's the life and this is the experience we are getting. We all should be happy with all our experiences. And there is one question coming up from the public. It's actually related to your mentoring stuff. Maybe you can give a small tip to the people that when you're in the bad mental situation, let's say you have a bad race, how to recover and how to focus on the next race or on the next, let's say, leg on the race, depending on the situation. But you said you had a bad moment in the regatta and you still have to compete till the end and you have to perform. How to overtake these bad moments at the present situation.
Yeah, well, it is a bit different for everybody. So you know, my answer won't be perfect for everyone. But basically, in general, you have to learn one thing. Like, you know, the defeat, a loss is something that will happen every time, especially in sailing. Like, sailing is a tricky sport. You might have a great start. You might be one of the fastest guys in the fleet, but you just go wrong way. Some strange shift happens and, you know, you came up last or, you know, second last. And you have to be able to learn from those mistakes. Just, you know, learn how to change your way of thinking from failure, defeat, loss as changes into learning. So, you know, you have only wins or you learn something. And basically with that attitude, you are able to analyze what happened. Okay, then you have to forget what did happen, and you have to focus on a new race. You have to focus on things that are around you at the moment that you know you can cope with. That there is no reason to keep in mind past events or think ahead in future terms, like, you know, my bad race, how it will affect my overall results, and will I lose to my friends, or, you know, something like that. So basically you have to learn how to calm yourself, analyze in a short period of time, just, you know, take whatever was bad, what mistakes I did, okay, I will not do them in another race, and just focus on your routine before another race. I mean, going into routines might be a key for a lot of people, because it gets your thinking. You know, you are not thinking about what happened. You just do the routine stuff. So it's good to have your pre-race routine, just, you know, checking the angles of the starting line. I don't know, taking energy gel, whatever it might be.
That's probably the best answer for this question. Always the best is to be in the present and to be able to analyze the present situation rather than thinking about the past or far future. And in sailing, unfortunately, a lot of people are stuck in the past when they did a mistake and they can't overcome. And what you said about routine, it's probably an entire topic itself about how to create a routine. And sure, that probably people can contact you and ask how to develop a routine, because it's probably the big field where it's very individual and it has to be created by each athlete to have their own routine, which they believe 100% and they stick to it. And no matter what happens, they always come back to their routine, which is giving them confidence.
Exactly.
And
yes,
that's a big area where people have to find their best behavior and where they find how they deal with it and then develop the routine. It's quite an individual task and it requires a lot of work. It takes, sometimes when you're discovering yourself, you're taking a lot of time, while when you talk to experts, they can share their routines and you can take the best ways. So that's the simplest thing. at this stage. So we are coming to the end, and the people who are interested, you can follow Marcin on his Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube channel, which he mentioned before, where he is sharing his knowledge and his experiences. And thank you, Marcin, for all your time and a really nice webinar. It's a really good and inspirational talk. People did learn that you are a very positive guy and you have a lot of passion for this sport, and this is what brings you to that level. So with the passion and with the clear goal, you can reach everywhere you want. So that's what we've seen from that webinar. And I hope we are going to see each other at some events in the future when they will happen.
Hopefully.
And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for having me. That was a pleasure.
Bye to everyone. And for people who are still in the lockdown, so we are running our special webinar next week on Tuesday. It's going to be about the Rule 42 with Ewan, who is the international judge and the race committee. And he made a really big and valuable project, and I had to do the filming. So we prepared a really nice material for the Rule 42. And he's going to be running the one of the last courses of this quarantine period. So please, people, join us, and next week.